So what happens is that I get asked questions in the media, and I try to provide a clear, correct, yet unbiased view about certain statements, whatever they would be. As most people know, Medicare, very, very complicated. So let's get into it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit pause at certain points of the sanitized version, and I'm going to add additional comments here only for subscribers to Jay's Corner.
A recent article is suggesting that Medicare eligible employees of large employers may be forced out of their health insurance plans. And here to talk with me about that is Jay O, author of Maximize Your Medicare. Jay, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Bob.
A pleasure. So the headline and this article is a bit frightening in a way, to think that folks who are Medicare eligible employees may be forced out of their employer provided health insurance plans.
So the background here is the Inflation Reduction Act will be in full flight in 2025. Most notably, there's going to be a $2,000 a year hard cap for out-of-pocket expenses for prescription drug benefits, which is going to be the provider of tremendous relief, financial relief to many. So no doubt here, Inflation Reduction Act, the outstanding characteristic will be that Part D, out-of-pocket maximum, will be capped at $2,000. Gone will be the idea of catastrophic stage, which exists this year, kind of a transition year. That said, what happens is if you are the employee of an employer-sponsored plan, that health insurance plan needs to meet the Medicare standard, which is called creditable coverage. Well, now that standard has just gotten much tougher to meet in 2025. So the question is going to be whether or not employer-sponsored plans are going to adopt prescription drug benefits which meet this minimum standard. If they do not, and an employee stays with the employer-sponsored plan, they would be subject to the Part D late enrollment penalty, one which once levied is permanent. Complicated, very complicated, Bob.
It is complicated. So first, remind our viewers what the late enrollment penalty is and how much.
The Part D late enrollment penalty, for those new to Medicare, is you need to have prescription drug benefits without interruption. That interruption can be up to 63 days, but not exceed that. From there, you would be penalized 1% per month of the national average, which is recalculated. And then that penalty never expires.
So as folks are trying to get their arms around this, if someone is an employee of a large employer that's offered employee health insurance and they don't have creditable coverage, what do you recommend that they do?
Well, I think two things. The first one is that, and you framed it perfectly, which is that what are they to do? Which is, if you're a full-time employee at a large employer, if you're the spouse who is older than 65 or otherwise Medicare eligible, you would want to ask your HR department whether or not next year's plan or this plan, the prescription drug benefits, is Medicare creditable coverage. If it is not, for example, you do need to think. So straight into it here, which is that since the prescription drug benefits are handled separately, they're considered separate, right? That the carriers are going to be changing their prescription drug plan benefits or not. And that isn't going to be decided only by the carrier,
but it's also going to be decided in conjunction with large employer HR departments. There's not going to be a rule to say that every employer is going to choose this far more robust standard which meets Medicare creditable coverage. And here's the issue.
Because it it is related to our other conversations, Bob, which we have discussed the idea that it has never been my thought that you would just blindly rely on your large employer plan, that you would actually check to make sure that is the most fitting combination of price and access to healthcare services that's efficient for your household.
This is probably the most complicated thing that I'm going to say in any Medicare video.
So, to get into the weeds a little bit more, if you're Medicare eligible, you're likely to be on Part A and maybe not Part B or Part D. Is the recommendation perhaps then that you would enroll in Part B and Part D, and maybe Medigap, and also, or consider as an alternative a Medicare Advantage plan with prescription drug coverage?
Those are all in play, Bob, is the candid reality. And for me, today, or this conversation we're having today, is just a very specific example of the general point, which is that it is comforting, it is easy to just consider the status quo and just accept your employer sponsored plan as the best. And it is certainly comfortable. That said, Medicare has certain very specific rules, and it just so happens that 2025, those rules are going to change, which is common to our theme, which is why we're going to probably be talking over time, hopefully, if you'll be good enough to have me.
So you mentioned spouses before. It strikes me that if you're the employee and your spouse is on your plan, there could be a big surprise coming, because I don't know if any large employers' HR department, employee benefit department, is reaching out to folks saying, hey, it's time for you to reevaluate your health insurance because there could be a late enrollment penalty for your spouse who's on your family plan.
And this is the difficult thing, is that HR people get my sympathy in the sense that they've got so many different topics to manage, 401k, other benefits, etc., that they're going to you'll very likely get a notice in the mail, possibly from the carrier, possibly from the employer, but it is whether or not that party will say, by the way, your spouse might be affected, is an entirely different matter.
Yeah, I try to play nice in public, right? Which is an entirely different matter. It should also be read as you're going to have to take responsibility yourself. There's not going to be a shortcut.
One thing I do want to point out, Bob, and I know pretty complicated today, is that I would suspect that most large employers are going to adopt a prescription drug benefits package, which does meet credible coverage. The issue is then the price, meaning that, as many people know, the large employers contribute a very large percentage of the overall cost of the plan, the entire package, the entire plan. The issue is whether or not, or how, the large employers are going to deal with it, because now they're going to have a plan to satisfy the full-time employee group and also manage the almost certainly higher overall cost of the overall plan.
And here's the issue, right? Is that you're a large employer. You've got tons of people working beyond 65 because they want to meet the full retirement age under Social Security. That's a valuable set of employees. I don't think there's any question about that. The issue, as a result of this article, makes it seem as if, oh no, every HR department is going to adopt some particular plan which doesn't meet the credible coverage standard.
Yeah. So do you foresee this happening, let's say, for sake of argument, an employer is paying 75% of the health insurance premium, that might go down to, say, 65 or 60%, and that the employee will end up picking up a greater percentage of the health insurance premium?
So now you've unlocked a whole nother set of topics, which is that employers are required to pay X percent of the total percentage under the ACA. And so now what you'll end up having is then, let's just say the large employer meets that standard. The cost then would be borne by the employee and their spouse in our example. And again, we ripple back. The feedback loop is back to our original point, which is simply that just blindly believing an employer-sponsored plan can mean you using excess money for benefits you don't need, or worse benefits than what you require or would like to access. And in many cases, both. I've seen that even prior to today, and going into 2025, certainly expect to see more of that.
Let's just call it a married couple $2,000. That's the full sticker price. Married couple $2,000, going to be about right. Right. It's lower than that, but depends on a bunch of other technical factors. Let's call it 2,000. But now, let's say, as a result of the Inflation Reduction Act, what will happen is the price is $2,200. That's the full sticker price. Well, let's say that the company paid 80%. Right? So they paid 2,000 times 80%, 1,600, leaving you with 400 a month. This is a very reasonable scenario, right? I think we can agree.
Yeah. So one last question. I'm anticipating that the juggling act is you're an employee, you're getting your open enrollment information here, and your spouse or you might be getting your Medicare open enrollment information here, and you've got a lot of comparing and contrasting to do, and it's not an easy calculation, I'm guessing.
It's not going to be an easy calculation. The reality is for people where one spouse requires substantial amounts of healthcare services, that it's actually has never been easy. It's been overlooked in many cases, I'm certain. This is going to make it more complicated. And in either case, whether or not the employer chooses to pass on the cost to the employee, or whether or not the prescription drug benefits don't meet the creditable coverage standard.
Yeah.
In either instance, certainly a little bit more complicated going into 2025.
Yeah. Well, I think having spoken to you about this, I think one thing is certain is the need to talk to a financial professional like yourself or others who are knowledgeable about this is more than necessary given the stakes are so high.
The stakes are high, Bob, but simply because people are not aware of the topic and the scope and scale of the amounts of money involved to people, that it's thousands of dollars can be the difference a year. And then on top of that, it's also the uncertainty. As many people know, health insurance, healthcare services, mysterious. And so as a result, having both of those resolved can be very valuable.
Yeah. Well, once again, Jay, you've helped us explain a complicated topic and made it less complicated. So thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom as always.
It's been my privilege, Bob. Thanks for having me.
So I sit, you can see under the bio, right, which is that I'm also part of the Alliance for Lifetime Income. My far better educated colleagues. You're familiar with the principles here in basically the newsletter, whether it be in the free or paid form, which is healthcare cost planning, if done correctly, not only saves you money, but it reduces volatility. It reduces uncertainty. When you reduce uncertainty in the most frontline concern that you could have, right? I mean, you get hurt, you fall off a curb, you're not opening schwab.com. That's not happening, right? You get sick, you go to Walgreens and you need medications. You're wondering about, okay, what's the cost of the medications? Is this going to be some mysterious multi-$100 a month bill? If you have the understanding of healthcare cost planning, this volatility basically erodes. It goes down a lot. It is, and my colleagues at the Alliance for Lifetime Income, you're going to have reprints. I'm going to start sending them out, which is that annuities basically running the same type of function. You can remember I'm here all the time, which is to basically say, look, it is that people, consumers, need to focus on the function. The main point here is the function fits. And in that way, healthcare cost planning, understanding about Medicare, so vital here, right? Fill the function of reducing uncertainty. Annuities reduce uncertainty. From there, from what remains, you can then feel more free to spend, to use. You don't have to sit on your wallet as to the same degree. I'm very sure this is the principle of license to spend, right? As soon as I saw the phrase, I'm like, okay, yes, that's a very, elegant way, graceful way of stating stuff, far more graceful than I can, invent, right? So I'm going to hijack that, of course, right? Which is that this license to spend then vital for other aspects of retirement and in your working life, to be candid with you. Right. And that also extends then all the way to portfolio strategy. Annuity, healthcare cost planning there to reduce uncertainty, therefore allowing you greater freedom, leeway to do with your savings, investment portfolio, whatever it would be, whether that be using money to go on vacation. All right. That's enough for today. Thanks, everyone.